everybody. I am really glad to say that today my guest is Dallas Travers. And Dallas, I know so well. Thank you so much for being here, first of all.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me finally.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought I was always scared. Okay, let me just set the stage here. Dallas has been my coach for 4 years.
Something like that.
Something like that, right? I mean, she met my boyfriend before he was my fiance, and we've known each other for a long time. And Dallas has been such an integral part of the impact that I feel like I'm making, or that I hope that I'm making, in the team that I have and the business that I'm hoping to create, and the mark I want to leave on the world, I would say, if I can say that, Dallas. And I was really excited to have you come on the podcast. And I was not only because you worked with actors for a long time, and I think kind of created an industry. And there's going to be tons of people who want to hear your voice and hear where you're at and all that stuff. So I thought, to get us started, I would love for you, I just feel like I would hand you the mic and be like, I'll listen the whole time. I could just be like, talk about whatever you want, because everything you say means something to me. But I thought, in case there's anyone who's listening who doesn't know, and there's probably some pieces, maybe you can tell us the story just over the last 15 years of building 3 six-figure businesses from scratch, what that impact was, and, what this has meant to you. And that a broad enough question so far? I want to leave it really broad so you can take it where you want.
Yeah. I'll answer it through the lens of actors, because that's the majority of your audience. So I started a business helping actors find agents. This was back in 2001. Because I don't even know if you know this story, but the job I got with a talent agency that took me from Northwest Washington down to Los Angeles, and it was a scam company.
Yeah, they were scummy. I remember
Yes. So I got this job working at a talent agency, and I was bartending at the time. So that sounded cool, right? And I worked there for 3 weeks, and then I didn't get a paycheck. I got a roll of $100 bills with a rubber band around it from a guy named Big Bill.
Wait, I didn't know that part of the story. It sounds like a drug deal or money laundering or something.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't think this is how this is supposed to go. Long story short, this was one of those, we're going to promise you the fame, but you have to pay for photographs first. And our photographer is conveniently in the alley as we speak.
Yes.
Give us all your money. Right. Okay. So I left, and I was really motivated by 2 things. My mom was like, this is sketchy. Don't take this job. So there's no way I was moving back home. And I felt disgusting. And I saw so many actors walk in and just put their hopes and dreams and common sense in the hands of somebody else, because they cared so much about being able to do this thing they were literally born to do. So I started this marketing service to help actors legitimately find an agent. And that just took me on a journey where people started asking me career advice, and I was not an actor or a casting director. I had no business giving people advice, so I just used my entrepreneurial skills, and this advice started working for them. So being this outsider gave me permission to it was my playground to design what intuitively felt right and tested, instead of following the rules.
Right.
So, I got to work with actors for forever. Right. So 2000, 15 years, 16 years. Okay. And, I wrote a book and all of these fun things. And it was just so joy filled for me, because actors are so filled with purpose. Right. And I loved that work. Yeah. And then my daughter was born, and I started to love Los Angeles less. And I started to love the entertainment industry less. For me, we threw our television away when she was born. So suddenly, I'm working in this industry, but not connected to it and not seeking one. Yeah. And that felt incongruent. So I closed the doors. Yeah. And while that was happening, I also was beginning to mentor other coaches. At first, coaches like yourself who serve actors, and it's expanded much more from there. So it's been now 20 years. 2022 will be my 21st year in business.
Wow.
Yeah. And
she can drink. Your child can drink.
She can drink. Right? Yeah. It's just been like a combination of creative intelligence, a strong work ethic, and trust in my intuition, knowing that no mistake I make will break me. That
Mm-hmm.
really has allowed, and this goes, I don't care if you're an artist or an entrepreneur or a seeker, a spiritual seeker, it doesn't matter. Though, if I had to pick the things that have helped me
Mm-hmm.
be successful and stay myself, it would be those things.
Yeah. What I heard you saying that is there's no risk. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's kind of what I hear you say. Like, you're not afraid to take a risk,
Right.
to make a mark, to say something different, to let's try this. And if it doesn't work, I'm not going to end up on the street with pushing a cart. I'm going to there's something's going to, I'll land on my feet somehow.
Yeah.
And so will my clients in a way, almost. Or so will the people that I'm, we'll together. As we talked about, before we got on the call, we talked a little about what we want to talk about today. And one of the things that came up was this idea of all those iterations of you doing this is really like, it's when I say the word rebranding, it really sounds like, who do you think you are, Pepsi Cola? But honestly, it is like, right. You're honestly saying like, this is who I am, right? This is the mark I'm leaving here. So I'm trying to attract in. I think that's what a brand is, what it's trying to attract in. And each of these times you had to say, okay, that's not me anymore. I'm now doing this. That's not me anymore. I'm now doing this. And I think that this audience like really gravitates to those kinds of conversations because they can see almost their career happen in phases at times. Like, I used to be the ingenue and now I'm here and I don't want to quite embrace that yet because I want my pictures to look young. So I have more, and it can be hard to go to the next door almost. And not that it's always that black and white. Let's be really honest about it. But I thought having conversation around this might just open some things up for this audience today. So if you were to take me back, like, I don't know if I want to go back to the bartending days, you tell me if that's worth looking at, because that feels like that was really like up against your values, clear decision. Like, I have to get out of here. But when you were going from actors to saying, I'm going to go all in on I can help coaches, was there any like cognitive dissonance? Like, what the heck do I think I'm doing? Imposter syndrome. Here we go. I'm going to be poor. I'm going to fall apart. What's going to happen?
It was less that and more navigating the letting go and the guilt I felt about abandoning people I really cared about. It actually makes me emotional to think about it because I haven't in so long. But I probably knew I was meant to make a change for 3 years before I got the courage to do it, because I had such an affinity for that audience, and I really was afraid that they would think I was abandoning them.
Yeah. I can so relate to that. Even when I thought about making a podcast where I only wasn't talking about acting, I could so relate to like, is anyone going to be mad or think that I don't love them anymore? So it held you in place for a few years there.
And there's another side to it that maybe some of your listeners can also relate to, which is I've put so much work into this so far and it's going well. It was going really well.
Right.
It was wild that I even decided to close that business down. Just if you looked at it, if I was a business person and making profitability decisions, that was not a smart one.
Right.
And I think for a lot of performers in particular, there can be this feeling of I've put so much into getting this far. I cannot give myself permission to change gears.
Yeah.
So it's like abandoning of oneself, where it was me feeling like I was abandoning people. I think a lot of us there's a mourning process and a rumbling, right?
Yeah.
With that feeling of abandoning our former self. Like, what does it mean about me if I change gears now?
Right. And I know we both listened to that podcast where they talk about the science of quitting.
Yeah.
Right. What is the name of the podcast? It's
called A Slight Change of Plans.
Right. Yeah.
And it's fantastic.
It's fantastic. Right. And then the science of quitting, they talk about how once you're on a path, our brains want to stay on a path. So that's not, even our brain isn't helping us with our emotional experience in that moment. Right.
Yeah.
That we'd rather,
not to mention society. Yeah. Right. Like people win awards for their perseverance.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. Like, is there a quitter award? Congratulations, you've changed gears 27 times,
Right. Yeah.
So there's pressure. There's pressure.
Yeah. And I can
I
also
don't
even
know.
see like, wait, I
Go
was gonna say
ahead.
that I can see that an actor, and I wonder if you, with the coaches that you work with, and I wonder if this comes up at all, but I can see how an actor, even with their family, who I think actors trying to say, this is what I do to your family, can feel like, let me explain to you what it means to be an outlaw. Like families don't understand so often,
Mhm,
but I'm wondering,
mhm.
but at least your family gets that you're like working at it. Like they can kind of see like, oh, you're working at it. You're like pursuing it. Does this come up a lot in the coach audience that you're talking to? Because I can imagine saying your coaches, is it the same kind of coming out party that you need to have with your family that you do when you're an actor? Like it feels like you have to, people can be
Mm.
still confused. I don't understand what you do. I still don't get it. Right?
Yes, and there's one big difference. We've all seen an actor. Like
Mm,
we've all turned on the television or seen a film or even like a street performer on Third Street Promenade. We have seen acting and we've seen it enough that we think we know it.
right.
So it's even more confusing. Like coaching, what are you, a soccer coach? Like,
Right.
and then it's sort of like, okay, I don't have a reference point for that, so it's okay that I don't understand. My
Mm-hmm.
dad does not understand what I do at all, at all. Still, he never did. He never has. But for actors, there's this extra layer because acting is familiar to all of us. And
Right.
so I think I know. And then I think it's just like, don't you just print out your resume and walk into Sony Pictures and give them your resume like you would for a receptionist job somewhere?
Yeah.
So I think it's a harder my experience is it shows up for coaches, but it doesn't stick. Where with
Mm-hmm.
actors, there's this stickiness
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when it comes to and also a need to be, we all want to be understood.
Yeah.
So when there's someone in your life who does not get it and they don't know that they don't get it, that can be painful.
Painful, totally painful.
Mhm.
Right. And then you can also, anything they say is like a total slap in the face. Like, oh, so you're still pursuing acting? Actually, I made money last year. I'm not pursuing it. I'm doing it. Like that whole
Right.
conversation, like the lightest language use can be an affront, right?
Totally. And
So
even
what?
when they
So
think they're being supportive, like
yes,
we sit down and we watch Grey's Anatomy and I look at you and say, "You should go on that show." It's like, "Oh, great idea, grandma."
yeah.
Thank
And also,
you.
you like hate her at the same, and you're like,
I
you
know.
cannot see past that. What they really want is like you would be really what they really don't want to. Like
They're
you, it's hard for us to see that they're saying great. I think my mom has even abandoned even understanding my work sometimes
huh?
because she really wants to, but so what do you, so she's heard me on a call before, so she kind of gets what it is, right? So as we're talking about this rebrand, I want to come back. So as we
Yeah.
just talked about, were you having any frustrating conversations with anyone with yourself? Besides yourself, I should say, when you were like, I'm gonna do coaches, I'm gonna go all in. Like, was it just
Mhm.
you were looking at a mirror, or was there anybody else you were wrestling with, or was the big wrestle with you?
It was with me. I can talk a pretty good game. Right? That's it. It's like a strength and a weakness I see in myself where I can make a convincing argument, meaning I can argue for my limitations and you're just going to like, it's a sound argument and you're going to support it. Right.
Yeah.
So there was no one to convince but me.
Mm.
And then there was the logistics conversation of the
Sure. How do
rebrand.
I freaking do this? How do I, what does it
Hmm.
look like? How do I make this happen?
How do I want to feel? That's the question to ask first.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to bring this back to your listeners, right? If
Yeah.
it's time for me to let an agent go or take a hiatus or throw out the beautiful headshots that I spent way too much money on because they're just not getting me calls.
Right. Yeah.
Like the first question I always ask myself is, how do I want to feel about this decision?
Yeah.
And that usually then connects back to my values, and everything I do runs through my values. And then it makes the hard decision really simple.
Hmm. Hmm. So this came up a lot for you as you were, just rebranding your podcast and the name of your business and everything recently.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
I see frustration on your face. You guys can't see the face, but I saw a little bit of like, oh yeah. What? Tell me what that was.
I do not have a tolerance any longer. So I tolerated misalignment.
In your own self is what you're saying. Like
Yeah,
me
like
being
I
not in.
tolerated, like, okay, I feel so back when I was the last year I was working with actors, I it did not feel I could tell that I was not aligned. I showed up and I delivered,
Yeah.
right? But I could tell that I was moving elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the tolerance for that feeling anymore. As soon as it comes up, Brian, I got to make a change. And so, like, the eye roll you saw was just me having compassion for my team, because I'm like, oh, this doesn't fit anymore. And they're like, great, let's remake everything again.
Totally. Do you want to share a
Mhm.
little bit of that story?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my signature program for coaches, it was called the Six Figure Coach Club,
Mm-hmm.
and I did all the market research around that, right? And that was the shared goal that my audience had, and it was a solid name. And the industry that I am in, it was too open to interpretation,
Mm,
meaning like slick Rick selling you a bag of goods and promising things that may or may not actually happen, right?
got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And also, one of my core values is belonging. And what I found as the program grew was it was working against the idea of belonging, because now here I am telling you your goal instead. And another core value of mine is agency, this freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually not in charge of your goal, but I can create an environment where any goal is possible.
Mm-hmm.
So and as soon as I realized that the name had to go,
Were you
the
like,
name went.
the name
It
had,
was,
did you also go like, the name has to go? Was it like, how fast can this happen? Can we make this happen faster? Was it like
oh,
that kind of?
completely. Yeah. And which is no small feat,
No.
because the program is like 72 training videos with worksheets and branding. And I had a podcast name to match and
Yeah.
all of the things.
Yeah.
But I just want to say all of those inconveniences are nothing compared to what it feels like to run a business that aligns with your values.
I just want everyone, and I want to make sure that everyone's relating this to themselves in a way. If there's actors
Mhm.
listening, like, this goes so far as like, what is on your resume? What does your headshot look like? Who are the agents that you work with? What are the artists who you surround yourselves with? Who are the coaches that you're listening to? And you see this when you see someone who's not in the right place. I mean, I'm sure you notice a coach who does not, when you're coaching now that I'm sure you were always in touch with your values, but now that your values are really leading the course for you, when
Mhm.
you're in a conversation with a client or a coach, I should say, are you so clear when you can see like, oh, this isn't what you like. This isn't what you really drive towards. Does it become very apparent when you're working with someone?
Yeah. And it just manifests in stuckness,
Hmm.
right? Like, my daughter's 7. And what it looks like is me trying to put her shoes on. It doesn't matter like what I do, my feet are not fitting into those shoes
Mm-hmm.
and forcing it. And I saw this with actors too, because there's so many shoulds and be careful and you don't want to, and
Yeah.
all of that crappy advice.
Yeah.
Um, it's really easy. Let's imagine a falling feather.
Mm-hmm.
So if you and I are sitting on a feather that is slowly falling to the ground, it floats so softly and slowly that sitting on the feather, we may not even notice that we're sinking,
Mm-hmm.
right? We
Mm-hmm.
can see it from the outside, but on it, it happens so slowly, you don't even notice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it can look like when you don't take the time to clarify what your values are and give them precedent. So that little fudge of a co-star to a guest star on your resume, or
Mm-hmm.
that little, like, just these little,
Yeah.
um
And
I
like
don't know, like
hearing meet with a
concessions.
manager or agent who says something, you're like, oh, that sounded a little racist to me, or that sounded a little
Mhm,
exclusionary to me, but maybe I
mhm.
didn't read that right, or no, that can't be what I'm hearing. This is a manager I want to give all my power to, and I'm going to say,
Yes.
or whatever it is. Like, I'm
Yeah.
using an
Yeah,
extreme
or
here, but
even someone who, like, doesn't a manager who doesn't respond to your emails when you reach out,
yeah,
right?
and you're like, oh,
Like,
I need to live
"Oh,
with that. That's
yeah,
okay.
it's pilot season. I haven't booked in a while." So we make these small concessions,
Yeah,
and in the moment, it is the most convenient and the easiest thing to do,
yeah,
but it's falling feather syndrome.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm,
Dallas or
mhm.
Brene Brown says it is uh, living up to your values isn't always comfortable.
Oh gosh,
Wow.
and I'll tell you, it's not, it's obvious, but not easy. Right? I said earlier about hard decisions become really simple,
Yeah.
but it's because they're clear. It doesn't mean that they're going to be fun.
Yeah, the executing them is not going to be like
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, and I'm done. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. So
Mhm.
as I was thinking about this conversation, I was thinking one
Okay.
of the things that you model for me is this fearlessness, this willingness to take a risk. I
Mhm.
mean, is there anything that scares you? I mean, I'm not talking like whole wide world, I guess. I'm gonna say like
Like
your
climate
whole
change
yeah,
scares
sure.
me.
Yeah, that kind of right. Good job with the whole wide world and climate change. There's good connection there. But I mean, like, but in general, is there something that you get scared of is it I'm curious.
Mm. I have never thought about this quality in myself, but I used to really care about what people thought of me.
Mhm.
And that might show up a little bit, but it's like an old tired habit instead of any sort of baggage. I'm
Mhm.
45.
Mhm.
I'm over that.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
Congratulations. That's a big one for a
Thank
lot of
you.
us. Yes. Yeah.
I think that here's why I'm when it comes to the way I live my life and the way I run my business, I'm fearless because I've gotten more benefit from my mistakes than I have from my successes.
Oh,
But
everybody, listen to that.
mhm,
Underline that. That is so. Isn't it just the pits? I mean, it's wonderful and it's the pits at the same
it's
time.
the
Like it is so
worst.
true.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, so I know now that I can recover. I can recover. I can
Mhm.
recover, and so I would rather have to recover than live with not doing the thing. It feels so cliche as I say it, but it's just what it looks and feel. Your artists can relate to this.
Yeah.
It's what it looks and feels like to like lead with purpose.
Totally. Yeah. And
Mhm.
some of you, I want to bring something up. I'm going to recall something you said, which is like, oh, you shoulda, coulda, what is the things you can't do or don't do that, or you might not like that. They really permeate a lot of actors'
Mhm.
brains, right? And what
Mhm.
I'm just realizing is each actor has their own blacklist. Here's the things that I will get blacklisted for. And that's their like they have their own blacklist inside of their head of the bad things you can do where you end up on the blacklist. And each of us have created it from the myths that we've seen. Are there any and all the work that you've done on the coaching you've done, is there any things that just seem like consistently on everyone's blacklist? You're like, oh, that's where you get blacklisted. You see that's everybody's fear.
I don't know if I understand your question. So are you asking, is there actually something that puts you on the
No,
blacklist? Or
no,
you're
no.
asking like what is
Yeah,
what
what's
do
like
people
what
think
is a
of
fear you
mhm.
have heard repeated since time immemorial in your coaching business that is the fear that people speak out loud that you see each person do? I mean, I have the one that I imagine that I hear a lot. I'll just share mine to get it started. Is like
Mhm.
I mean, it's almost always showing up, like being seen.
Yeah.
Am I willing to be seen? Am I willing to be seen? Is there another one that you've picked up on or a theme that you hear a lot?
Yeah, visibility is the big one, and it's like catastrophizing it. So if I go live or make an offer or fill in the blank,
Yeah.
do anything, right? I face rejection, and rejection is I cannot recover from rejection. That's the
Mm.
big one. Fear
Yeah.
of rejection
Yeah.
and fear of I don't want failure is too generic, but fear of making a permanent mistake.
Mm.
If I could wave a magic wand,
Yeah.
it would be for everyone to understand that no mistake is permanent. Especially if you're someone with a heart, you can
Yeah.
fix. I've screwed up, right? Big
Yeah.
time. And I've been able to repair,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's also interesting as you say that because I think so. I forget the woman's name right now, but I'll try to remember it for everybody. But the woman who talks about the science of apology and how we don't have a
Mm,
lot of practice with apologizing.
right.
And so the idea that I might make a mistake and then I have to like this, what is an apology? Like, what does it mean to say, I'm sorry? Like, it's a very big, it's probably less hard than writing the email and sending the email, just so you know. Just
Right.
send an email, right? Like,
Mhm.
doing whatever the bigger, scarier thing is that you're scared of doing, or reaching out to the casting director, or whatever that is,
Yeah.
right?
I have a story.
Yeah.
So, I this to me is an actor's worst nightmare.
Okay, great. Can't wait.
So so I'll call this actor Wilma.
Okay.
So Wilma had an audition, and I don't know how this happened, but Wilma fell like during the audition, tripped, fell, hit some sort of breaker on the wall, and the
No.
power went out.
No. Oh my God. This is like a cartoon. This is like
Yeah.
yeah.
Like an SNL skit
Yeah,
or
totally.
something,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And it was about a year. So Wilma is dead to that casting office in her mind, right? Like, how do you recover from
Yeah.
that? About a year later, she booked a job through that office. And casting, when they brought her back in, the casting director said, I've just been waiting for a chance to bring you back because that was terrible. Right? So I think we have to all remember when it comes to this fear of visibility,
Yeah.
right? And like the risk we face when we put ourselves out there. Like, humans in general, we root for each other, right? So we got to give casting or Agent X or whomever
Right.
more credit than we often do, because in our minds, right, Brian, we make
Yeah.
up the most grotesque stories.
Oh yeah, I love to do it. You know, I have my own triggers of who I
Mhm.
love to make it up about. But what you just made me think about is how one lesson you've taught me is people really respond to your striving,
Yeah,
not
right.
just your achievement, right? And that's the big journey that with so many actors that I've been on is like, your resume doesn't have to be perfect. If you can be explicit with where you're heading or where you're going, a manager or agent can see you and better
Mhm.
understand who you are. Like
Mhm.
it's almost like proving your mettle, but I don't love that phrase, but it's almost like I
Yeah.
can understand the actor you are because of where I see you going, not just exactly the steps not exactly just every accomplishment you've made on the way.
Right. So how do you navigate that with your clients, because they are acting as their purpose? So the stakes are naturally higher than like,
Right.
I'm going to start a business and see how this goes. And if it doesn't go, like, I can try another business. There's like more pressure. So as a
Yeah.
coach, how do you navigate that layer for people?
You're really breaking character, Dallas, asking me
Oh,
questions right now. So
sorry.
I really love it.
I'm
I
so
love,
curious
I
to
love it.
know.
No, it's perfect. We're really living out the title of the show. You know, there's one thing that actors have that coaches don't exactly, which is an actor can say, oh, I'm going to go to acting class today. I'm going to act today. I'm going to find a space to
Mm,
act. I'm going to find a way to act today, so that they get to be aligned with that purpose, even if there's not the exact audience that they want in that moment.
right.
It's not a screen. It's not on camera. It's not on the stage. I can go to acting class, or I can make something with my friends. There's a little bit of freedom in that piece of it. But then
Mhm.
the other piece, can you ask your question in another way?
Yeah, I'm just aware that we're talking about there's no mistake you can't recover
Yeah.
from, and what
Yeah.
matters is that you're striving like this, and I don't want it to diminish
Yeah.
the purpose behind what so many actors feel. I just think the stakes are naturally higher. So
Totally.
I just was wondering what kind of role those higher stakes play and how you help your clients live this.
Yeah. It's interesting is it's almost the cart before the horse. Like,
Mm,
what is your purpose? Right. What is and so I think sometimes actors can stop at, my purpose is to act and to make an impact with acting. Actually, what
uh-huh.
is the purpose of you acting and the impact you want to make? It's not the same as the actor right next to you on this coaching call with me right now,
Mhm.
because she is hoping that 13-year-old girls who pop up, like yeah,
Yeah.
right. And I think that getting into that idea of who you're hoping to affect, or what you're hoping who will embrace your art. Yes, we want masses to embrace your art. And then also, who's the person in the audience of thousands that you're actually thinking about? And so if
Mhm.
we can make that purpose bigger than the stage or the screen, then the striving becomes, it's almost like what James Clear says of Atomic Habits. I'm very into Atomic Habits right now, which is that
Okay.
you create habits that are of the person you're wanting to be, as opposed to goals that person achieves. So the person I want to be is a person who
Mhm.
acts 20 hours a week or 5 hours a week or whatever. And so that you are working towards that. And it doesn't diminish an accomplishment in any way, shape, or form. But in an acting career, I think this differs a bit from coaches, is we know there is so much to chance
Yeah.
around you getting a part. Like, that is in
Mhm.
many ways a miracle and an accident at the same time,
Mhm.
because the other girl had blonde hair. We didn't want a blonde today, or she looked
Mhm.
like someone I know, or whatever. Right. And
Mhm.
it should also rely on the fact that you're freaking awesome and you're talented. Of course it relies on all those things, but it's not the only piece of the pie here.
Yeah.
And so this way, the solid ground that I think you have to live on, or that I want you to live on, or that I coach people to live on, is in the impact that you're making, in the purpose that right. So it has to
Yeah.
be louder. It has to be louder than the other piece of it. I don't know if
Got
that
it.
quite solves it enough. I think it happens through experience more than it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But the other
Yeah, I
answer also,
really agree with that.
the other answer is if I have to meet an actor who's feeling cranky, like so this beginning of the year, we're talking at the beginning of the year, right? Beginning of 2022. And I had a coaching call at the beginning of January and multiple people on the call were like, I'm feeling not great. And should I be an actor? And there are a lot of uncomfortableness with their purpose. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, it took me a minute, but I was like, oh, y'all haven't acted in a long time, have you?
Oh, you could smell it on them.
Yeah, you've been in vacation mode, you've been at home. We've all been
Uh-huh.
home, but like you've been in your couch and watching TV and there hasn't been acting class and they haven't had audition. Like, of course, you have not had a time of day where you are executing your purpose. And so the safest, easiest place to look is business, business, business. But the real truth is where's the craft, right?
Yeah.
How does
The
this,
real reason
yeah,
you're
yeah.
doing this, right? Yeah. So what I heard, I love it, is this idea of creating a cause,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that the stakes can be high, but they're actually so high that they're not even about me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool.
It's about, yeah, how am I changing the world? I mean,
Mhm.
how am I changing the world without that sounding trite? Honestly, how do I
Yeah.
helping to affect the world? Also, otherwise acting becomes some super selfish. What are you doing this for? And do you just want to be like rich Angelina Jolie, which actually I think Angelina Jolie does wonderful things. So I'm not trying to put her
Mhm.
down, but like, are you
Mhm.
just looking for fame, which is go be on a
Mhm.
reality show,
Mhm.
right?
Well, and just the business of acting is inherently so self-centered. Submitting on Actors Access, you're just staring at photos of yourself,
Yeah, totally.
right? And like,
Right.
so it's inherently self-centered, which can be a slippery slope, right? If you're not connected to that
Right.
purpose.
And it can make you feel like I'm not who I'm really meant to be, because who you're really meant to be is not to be solely affecting it. I
Right.
believe is not to be only focused on yourself. It is, why is submitting this photo connecting to, and let's just be real. No one has a stamina to think of this all day freaking long, right? You have to have
Yeah.
some kind of solidity to
Mhm.
this. There's this for coaches who are really on a purpose, which is what a lot of what your languaging is, right?
Yeah.
That's the name of your new podcast, right? Not new, but new name.
Coaches on a mission.
Coach on a
Coaches
mission. That's
on a
right. Yes, coach on a
mission.
mission.
Yep.
Right. So these are heart-centered coaches, I'm imagining, who really
Mhm.
believe in the impact they're having. Does
Mhm.
their lack of coaching hours show up? Does that
Right.
make,
I
not,
think,
not like not in terms of professionalism or good at it or expertise, but in terms of like, I'm not feeling good about my business, right? Is it because, do you ever note, is it ever in relationship to, well, you need to coach somebody. You've been not doing it for a while. Does that ever?
yeah, it's interesting. As I was listening to you, I thought, yeah, that's right. Coaches can't just go like, what am I going to do? Go downstairs and coach my husband and not stay married for very long. So yes, and what I see with coaches is a hiding behind coaching. I mean, this can come up with some actors too, where it's like I'm in acting class all the time and I'm lugging furniture to do my scene.
Right.
I'm like
I'm doing the
wearing,
work.
I'm doing the
I'm carrying the
work,
stuff. Yeah.
but I'm not putting myself out there,
Right.
right? I think it's that more for coaches because
Got it.
they can do market research and they can give complimentary sessions and get all coacherson,
Uh-huh.
but and hide behind the visibility, hide away from the visibility piece. So when I was listening to you, I thought, oh, right. So a coach's answer to, come on, you got to just act. You can act every day
Mhm.
would be take your creative intelligence and your purpose, how you show up naturally when
Mhm.
you're coaching someone, and funnel that into your marketing
Mm.
so that you can. Because unlike actors, where so much is left up to chance, with coaches, you can find a client. You have to put yourself out there and like trial and error and do some strategy, but it's kind of guaranteed,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's just like put that same hit we get when we're attuned and really coaching, that feeling needs to be funneled into the client attraction piece in the marketing.
Yes. Which you're so good at. Which you love. Do you love it? Do you love to do that? Do you love it when you see, I know one of your values in your business is spark. Can you just describe that for people? Because I think everyone can relate to that.
Yeah. I couldn't think of, and I'm still open. If someone knows the word for this moment, I'm totally open to that.
You can hit
But I
up
didn't
Dallas on
know.
Instagram with a new word if you think you've got one
Yes,
for her. Right.
totally. But I live for those, I call them spark moments. And it's where a thing happens, and now the way I see myself is just different, and there's no going back. So the best example I can give of this is when my daughter taught herself to ride a bike.
Hmm.
She woke up that morning and she was a kid with training wheels. That was her identity. She was cool with that. But there was a flat tire situation and a mom who felt like challenging her a little bit. So I came out of the garage with a bike with no training wheels on it. And the look on her face was like shock and horror, really. She just didn't know what to do, didn't feel ready. And I was just curious, right?
Right.
And so it didn't go well on the street because I'm trying to hold the bike up and I'm not fit or fast. So I'm like dragging her. It was not good. But then we went in the backyard. So there's grass. If she falls, she's fine.
Yeah.
It's also really hard to pedal.
Really hard.
Much harder to
Yeah.
pedal in grass than on concrete. Alone for 10 minutes, she's riding back and forth in her red swimsuit on this bike like nobody's business. And the end of that day, she's like, Dad, watch this. And she just cruised down that street.
Uh-huh.
And now she's a kid who rides a bike. And that's how she saw herself. Her relationship to the bike, to her body, to her being was completely changed forever because that thing happened. And I love those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. I can just relate to the moment that one of the times I see people do this is inside a program called Agent Goals, which y'all have heard about before, but where people are sharing their story in front of other people in their life, people that they know. And there's so much buildup and fear around being honest with their story. And then the moment that they share it and people like jump out of their seats to say, oh my God, that was amazing. I can't believe how much I knew, how much more I want to know about you. And everyone leans in and it was all this like, oh, I was carrying all this and didn't think any of this was valuable. And look what it made these people feel without me even making it performative, with me just doing it. Right. And they can't, that once that's done, it's like, okay, great. The rest of this program's a breeze because I can't go back to the person who didn't love their story before or understand their story. Yeah.
You know, there's something else I want to say about this because sometimes spark moments aren't magical in that way, but they're just as powerful. So Instagram Reels, here's an example for you.
Everybody needs to go watch Dallas's Instagram Reels because she puts them out like crazy. I feel shame when I watch them and also joy because they're so fun. And I can tell you're having a good time. I can tell you're feeling silly. I mean, am I right when I say that? Because it looks like it.
My husband is so confused. He's like, you are a business owner. This is what you do now? He doesn't have an Instagram account. He does not get it. He's so confused. Creating Reels is like a highlight of my life. It is so fun for me. I'll watch my own Reels like 27 times and crack myself up every single time. I love it. 6 months ago, there's no way ever that I would have ever thought to do that. I'm too old and I don't want to, and I'm too busy and all the things. But so I did a reel, right? And it got like 3 views. And like my mom, thank goodness for our mothers, right? Like Harley Shasta Shelby liked it. Those are the names of her 3 dogs. So, and I survived.
Yeah.
And that was equally a spark moment. It's like, oh, this thing that I thought was going to be so hard and so embarrassing and so pressure filled. It was actually just a thing. It actually didn't go well, but it was just a thing.
Yeah.
And that changed how I saw myself. Oh, I can totally put myself out there. The worst thing that's going to happen is Harley Shasta Shelby's going to like my post and no one else is even going to know it happened.
Yeah.
So this place where I was like taking myself so very seriously and it felt super risky, that spark moment was just a reality check. Like, oh, it's no big deal. So now I can just mess around. And I have so much fun messing around on Reels. It's like, I wake up in the morning with Reels audios in my mind instead of actual music. It's like a Kardashian dub playing over and over in my mind because I just love it so much. So that's another example. Like it doesn't, sometimes spark moments are the most mundane things ever.
Sure. I mean, I'll share a mundane one for me. The day that I realized a countertop in the kitchen is a countertop in the kitchen and it's allowed to get dirty. Like I was resentful. I was life-changing. I was resentful of Jake every day. This counter right here, I hate to wash off because it's too far from the sink and I can't use a sponge and I don't make this counter dirty. And I was like, one day I was like, this is a kitchen counter. We're going to not have this moment anymore. What is the point of this? Why am I like, so the New York Times is not coming to take a photo shoot of your house right now. Calm down. Right. So what I heard and you just said though, I want to repeat back something is like, you had a lot of fear around this thing of being seen in some weird way. and the spark came. Do you find that spark often comes from a confronting? Because like even my story that I just said, I know we're talking this out in real time right now, but even in my story, it was like people are afraid to tell their story. They tell their story, afraid to get on the bike, afraid of the real. I wonder if there's something. I mean, I wasn't afraid of anything with that counter, so maybe it is a little more mundane.
You asked about confronting.
Yeah.
You were confronting your own control freak issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And
right?
also being seen. There's something about me in my house, like when it's, I feel like, look at the house I'm in. Like, not that I have this like fabulous palace or something, but like I feel really good about my life when my house is clean. I'm sure this has to be with being a child of a divorced family and being a latchkey kid and cleaning the house before mom came home or some bullshit like that. But when the house is clean, I feel like I can feel comfortable, right? So I'm sure leaving the countertop dirty leaves me feel a little less safe, right? So there's a fear there.
There's a confronting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about American Idol. I don't, is that show still?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So like Ruben Studdard, the original American Idol.
Yeah.
So those are like, or the Olympics, right? When someone, or the Great British Bake Off, which I love, where we see someone who works really hard for something and then they achieve. That is also a spark moment, but I think that is also confronting something.
Yeah. Well, you know, and Great British Bake Off is a really good example. If anyone's not watched it, go watch, because you see them spark 3 times an episode, because everyone who wins the challenge is shocked that they won the challenge. Almost always, almost without fault. So you could see them go like, oh, wow, I'm on the British Bake Off and I could do that. Like I think that's part of why the show's so enjoyable, is that ability to see people continually go, oh, wow.
Yeah. They're like sparking in real time, right?
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. There is something about confronting one's identity, right? And whether that's looking in the mirror and accepting it fully, like my daughter's story, like I am a bike riding kid, or looking at the kitchen counter and getting over yourself, right? There's a shift that happens.
There's also confronting, even when you said even around Farina riding the bike, is like there's also direct fear, like I'm gonna fall and hurt myself. There's a confronting of like, if I have a skin knee, am I gonna get over? Like, am I gonna cry? Am I gonna I don't know what that pain. It's like when people would play baseball and throw a ball, and I'd be like, no, like don't get me right. Like get away from I'm afraid the ball's gonna hit me in the face, right? But something about the magic of what you just described as a spark is it's also not something, at least what I'm hearing, that you knew you were afraid of. Like you wouldn't have been able to articulate it beforehand. Like, would you have been able to say, I'm afraid of being seen as not a classy business lady for doing a reel, or no? Tell me true.
I was afraid of wasting my time.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe sometimes it can. This is fascinating, though.
Boy, yeah. We need to talk like this more often.
I know. I love it. Yes. Look, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I want to ask you another question. And in the work that you did, I'm going to ask you a 2-part question. Okay. In the work that you did with actors, what's the biggest thing that they taught you?
I mean, so many things, but I got reflected back to me every single day. What it actually looks like to hear that inner voice calling and do something about it. That's why I love actors, and coaches have that too.
Yeah.
But actors, it's like in such a pure, purposeful, I'm going to go all in sort of way. Like how many other people would sign up for grad school, spend 3 years rolling around on the floor, like wholeheartedly, and be like that willing to go for it, right? And I got that reflected back to me every single day. Like, what does it actually look like to listen to a calling and do something about it? It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I appreciate you saying that. For me, as for me, I always say I'm the selfishest coach in the world, because I get to have clients who are going all in, and also actors are super emotional, and it's so much more joyous to be with someone who's willing to show you what's going on with them and where they want to go, which is such a fun space to coach from. So now with your audience of coaches, what are they teaching you?
Sorry, I'm not going to cry about this one. A couple of things. But the big one is the importance of learning in public.
Talk more so we
Yeah.
understand.
So if I'm a coach and I'm trying to figure out my niche, right? I could read books and listen to podcasts and try to figure it out, but I'm not really going to know until I start coaching, until I pick a niche and start coaching a niche. And then odds are I'm going to have to course correct, because it rarely happens that the first answer is the best answer, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm a coach and I'm going to go live, right? Because I don't know how to do it right. And then someone calls in the middle of my live and my live drops. And I feel like a fool, like I'm running a business. I say this often, but running a business is the act of figuring stuff out in public. That's what we do as entrepreneurs, is make mistakes in front of people, because that's the only way you get feedback.
Yeah.
So I just get reminded of, because I can have perfectionist tendencies for sure. I also like a clean kitchen counter. I just get reminded over and over again of the value and actually the essentialness of making mistakes in public.
So good. So good. And the thing that I keep hearing in everything you said is just the courage and bravery it takes to do any of these things, right? That it's so much too. And for many people, it can be like, this is easy. And then suddenly the big thing comes, or but that was one fear I didn't have in front of myself. Oh, I didn't realize that person is going to react, or people can have this one person is the reason I'm not doing anything in my business, because their voice is really loud for me. And I just see the continual need for courage in this whole process. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's just like, it takes work to sing your song. That's like no small feat. And it's hard, and it's like the easiest thing and the hardest thing all at once.
Yes.
Right? It makes your life 1,000 times better and 100 times more difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Dallas, I am sure a ton of people are going to feel inspired by this conversation today. Obviously, we're already following you on Instagram, but just in case anybody didn't know your handle and wants to watch all these reels, can you tell them where to go?
Yeah, well, and it's a new handle, so you got to make sure you don't go to my old account.
Okay.
My new, where all the
rebranding.
action,
She can't stop rebranding. People, she just can't stop.
I break stuff, start over as often as I can. So it's Dallas Travers Biz Mentor is where you will see the Kardashian lip syncing happening.
Perfect. This is what you expected to hear today, everyone. Is there anywhere else they should be looking for you? I know your website has great resources. Is there anywhere else they should be going?
Yeah, dallastravers.com, especially if I know you from my past life. It would be so nice to hear from you. I would love to hear from you.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. We don't get to talk like this very often, because we're working on stuff. And so this is a real joy. And I just appreciate coming on the pod and sharing really what your story is. I think people will see a lot of value out of today. So thank you for coming on, and also for breaking the character today, taking the question and giving it right back to me. I'm into, really living out the title of the show today. Thank you.
I try. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
This was fun.